Didn't your parents teach you anything? Today is a family dinner, right? Isn't it common sense for the wife to be on her feet?
While I was resting in the room, my husband, Kyle, kicked me in the back. I fell to the floor along with the phone I was holding. I was relieved that I managed to protect my stomach, but anger quickly rose within me.
This is unbelievable. I'm pregnant, you know? What if something happens? Will you take responsibility?
What are you saying over a little kick? Anyway, Sarah, this is all your fault, right? You're the one who slacked off without asking me. If you can't listen, divorce is fine by me. Let's see if you can live on your own.
Kyle began to laugh quietly so that the relatives in the living room wouldn't hear. Normally, I would have just stayed silent and been laughed at. However, it was different that day. I had made up my mind.
Fine, let's get a divorce. But you're gonna pay up. For the affair, too.
Kyle's eyes widened in shock at both my unusual attitude and the word affair. How much does he need to belittle me to be satisfied? I already knew everything. Kyle, I'm going to make sure you regret this. No matter what, I will. Kyle froze for a moment, then burst out laughing.
Oh, come on, Sarah. Divorce? Affair? What are you talking about? You really surprised me there with that wild claim. Are you mad about me scolding you? It's so low to say such things out of the blue. That's why you're a terrible wife. Well, that was a good laugh. Anyway, I'll head back to the living room, and you'd better start learning how to be a proper wife.
He puffed out his chest and tried to walk back to the living room with a smug expression. However, just as he stepped out, he ran into my father. My father didn't say a word but looked at Kyle with his lips tightly pressed together, a quiet anger flickering in his eyes.
Oh, hey there, Dad. What brings you here? Oh, were you checking on Sarah, too? You must be worried, right? It's her first pregnancy, after all. I was worried, too, since she disappeared so suddenly, so I came to check on her. Anyway, you go ahead. I'm done talking.
Kyle smiled without changing his expression, lying effortlessly. Well, technically, he did come to check on me. Only to seize the opportunity to mock me. He really is a rotten man. However, such tricks wouldn't work on my father. Without saying a word, my father pulled his phone out of his pocket and showed the screen to Kyle. Kyle's cheek twitched instantly. On the screen was my face. That's right, my father and I had been connected via video call the whole time.
I've seen everything you've said and done. It seems your version of events was quite different from what I just heard from you. Come on, let's head back to the living room together. No need to hesitate. We're family, after all.
My father loosened his facial muscles into a smile as he spoke, but his eyes remained cold. Kyle stood there frozen, unable to say anything, his smile faltering. This man, who always mocked me, never thought I'd turn the tables on him. With nothing left to say, Kyle was dragged back to the living room by my father. By the time I followed the two into the living room, it was enveloped in an unusual atmosphere. Everyone, including my mother, my in-laws, and the rest of the relatives, was staring at my husband, whose collar was being grabbed by my father, who was quietly fuming. As soon as I arrived, my mother quickly shifted her gaze to me. Though she didn't say anything out of consideration for my father, her eyes clearly demanded an explanation of the situation. I smiled gently and made eye contact with each of the relatives one by one. It was a signal that the stage was about to rise. The relatives seemed relieved, thinking they were finally about to get out of this situation, but they were mistaken. What was about to begin would only lead to more chaos. They were about to face truths they wouldn't believe, but I wanted them to stay through to the end.
Everyone, I have something important to confess. Since getting married, I've been constantly mistreated by Kyle. Just a little while ago, during this family dinner, he kicked me in the back because a wife shouldn't be sitting. He kicked me, even though I'm pregnant. But according to him, it's my fault for slacking off without asking him. All I wanted was to prioritize our baby and rest.
Tension quickly spread across the previously relaxed faces of the relatives, and all eyes widened. After staring at me as if trying to bore a hole through me, they slowly turned their gaze toward Kyle with fear and disbelief. Kyle, still being held by the collar, could only dart his eyes around. It seemed like he still hadn't fully grasped the situation. The relatives exchanged glances and began whispering among themselves.
Did she just say he was mistreating her? You mean Kyle did that?
Really? We've known him since he was a child, and he was always such a good boy.
But look at her father. He hasn't said a word since earlier, but he looks furious. What's really going on?
Confusion had returned to everyone's faces. It was only natural. Kyle had never shown his true self around the family. To them, he was still stuck in the image of the innocent boy they remembered. It was time to slowly shatter that image.
Everyone, please take a look at this video.
I pulled out my phone and held it up for the relatives to see. As I pressed the play button, a video of Kyle and me began to play on the small screen.
Sarah, are you really going to make me eat this disgusting food? What is this weak chicken noodle soup? There's no flavor. You probably didn't even bother making proper stock, just threw in canned chicken broth, right? You know, back in the day, guys used to propose by asking women to make good meals for them every day. But with soup this bad, nobody is going to want to marry you. Here, you can have it. Oops, I spilled it all over your head. Well, you look just right now. Get out of here, you're an eyesore.
The video showed Kyle constantly berating me like this. At first, the relatives were silent, watching the screen with bated breath. But after a few minutes, panic set in.
Oh my God.
Kyle did that.
Such phrases flew across the room in all directions. Amidst the chaos, Kyle's parents managed to calm the relatives down. They reminded everyone that talking all at once would only make things more confusing. His parents then asked for permission to represent the group and confront Kyle about the mistreatment.
Kyle, I can't believe what I'm seeing. No, I don't want to believe it, but is it true you've been treating Sarah this horribly?
Please answer honestly. We're your parents. What you've done concerns us too. As your parents, we have to take responsibility.
His eyes darted around for a while, and then he glanced at my father. My father stared at him silently, his face expressionless, with an intensity that suggested he wouldn't miss a single word Kyle said. If Kyle uttered even a single lie, my father would bare his fangs immediately. Kyle slumped his shoulders in defeat, seemingly resigning himself to the situation.
I'm sorry, Dad, Mom. It's true that I've been harsh to Sarah. Lately, work has been really tough. Ever since I got a new boss, everything changed. Of course, that's normal when you're working, but this new boss doesn't appreciate my efforts at all. On top of that, he explodes over the smallest mistakes, and he does it in front of everyone, shouting. It's been wearing me down. I took my stress out on Sarah to release it. I'm the worst. Sarah, I'm sorry for being so awful to you. And I'm sorry to you too, Dad, and to everyone for causing this commotion.
He spoke with a trembling voice, even letting tears well up in his eyes. Seeing his remorseful demeanor, a look of pity began to appear in the eyes of the relatives. Kyle's parents, both looking pained, apologized me and my father.
We sincerely apologize for the terrible treatment our son has shown to Sarah.
We don't expect to be forgiven easily. But Sarah is carrying a new life inside her. As you can see, our son is remorseful, so we ask for your kindness and understanding.
My mother-in-law's voice cracked as she dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. Some of the relatives, seemingly affected by the emotion in the room, were also covering their faces. What compassionate people they are. They must have truly loved Kyle from the bottom of their hearts. It's such a shame. Kyle has completely ruined these people's beautiful tears.
I'm sorry to interrupt this moment of sentiment, but Kyle is lying. The reason he's been mistreating me has nothing to do with work stress.
What? Then why would our son treat you so horribly?
It's true he's done something unforgivable, but Kyle isn't the type to hurt someone without any reason. There must be an explanation, right?
His parents still held out a sliver of hope for him. It was understandable. After all, he was their only son, whom they had raised with great care. I could imagine how they must feel, being pregnant myself with a new life. However, that doesn't mean I can forgive Kyle. For the sake of our unborn child's future, I need to nip this problem in the bud.
Kyle mistreated me because he wants a divorce. He has feelings for someone else.
My bombshell statement caused the biggest uproar of the day. Kyle's parents were so shocked they nearly collapsed, and the relatives started shouting.
An affair?
After everyone voiced their shock, they all turned their eyes toward Kyle. No one spoke, but their sharp stares demanded an explanation.
Wait a minute, I'm just as confused as you all are. Yes, I mistreated Sarah, but the affair thing is absolutely untrue. Seriously, just look at her belly. Our baby is about to be born any day now. You think I'd be whispering sweet nothings to another woman at a time like this?
Thank you for your desperate denial. It makes it all the more enjoyable to fight back. Now, let me explain how I found out about the affair.
I responded with an unusually lively tone on purpose. Honestly, it was fun to corner Kyle. I had built up resentment for years. There was no way I was going to let this end easily.
It was about a month after I found out I was pregnant. Up until then, Kyle and I would chat happily together during his days off and after work, but all of a sudden, his phone usage skyrocketed. He usually only used it for calls, but now he was constantly glued to the screen. Naturally, I started getting suspicious, right?
I tilted my head playfully, and Kyle's face twisted with discomfort. That's the face I'd been waiting to see from him. I was going to make it twist even more. I continued, more talkative than I'd ever been in my life.
After thinking about how to get to the truth, I decided to unlock his phone using fingerprint recognition while he was asleep. I was so nervous that he might wake up, but as soon as I unlocked it, all my tension disappeared. You see, I found a dating app installed on his phone. I was beyond excited. I immediately checked the messages and then followed Kyle on one of his dates. That's when I confirmed he was meeting with another woman.
You went that far?
Kyle exclaimed, starting to bite his thumbnail, a nervous habit he's had since childhood. While he's good at spinning lies with his words, his actions always give him away. To press him further, I raised my phone, so only Kyle could see the screen. Displayed on it was a certain photo. Kyle's jaw dropped as he stared in disbelief. I almost felt like humming in satisfaction. I fought the urge to skip in glee and instead walked calmly toward one of the women present. With each step closer to her, the atmosphere thickened with impending doom.
Stand up.
The woman looked utterly confused, and so did everyone else. To clarify, I added,
Kyle said that wives shouldn't sit down without permission. So please stand up, Mom. After all, you're also Kyle's wife, aren't you?
The room fell deathly silent. This reaction was unexpected. I had assumed they'd make an uproar like before. As it turned out, it seemed they were too shocked to speak.
Sarah, what are you saying?
This must be some kind of joke, right? The way you said that, it's like Kyle's mistress is your mother?
Yes, Kyle's mistress is my mother.
As I bluntly stated the truth, the relatives finally broke their silence, their shock manifesting in gasps and whispers. They were struggling to process this revelation. For clarity, I distributed the photo I had previously shown to Kyle to everyone. It showed him and my mother, arm in arm, hugging, and even entering a hotel together. My phone's gallery was full of pictures documenting their secret meetings. I watched as the color drained from my mother's face.
What? How could you know? Since when? I was sure no one would find out. This is insane.
Don't you have anything to say for yourself?
Honey. No, this is all a terrible misunderstanding. I was just giving Kyle some marriage advice, that's all.
You fool. What's with giving marriage advice to Kyle? Do you even realize what you've done? An affair is bad enough, but with your daughter's husband, this is beyond disgraceful. Maybe you were flattered by the attention from a younger man, but have you ever stopped to consider how Sarah must feel, having her mother steal her husband?
My father, typically a serene and composed individual, erupted in anger. Growing up, I had watched him often, yet I had never witnessed such emotion from him. Apparently, my mother hadn't either. She could only open and close her mouth like a fish, utterly speechless. Understanding that no words could soothe his anger, she fell to the ground in defeat.
I'm so sorry.
Sorry? Do you think an apology can fix this, you fool? You vowed to love me for life when we got married, and now you've broken that promise. At our age, when we should be thinking about the end of life, I never thought I'd be considering the end of our marriage. I never imagined it would come to this. I'll hear your reason, though.
I was lonely. Ever since I got sick, you stopped touching me. I was still happy with the life we built, supporting our family, but I couldn't deny there was something missing. Then Kyle started talking to me. It made me feel wanted again. It made me feel like I wasn't done as a woman. Being desired, it made me happy.
My mother was diagnosed with breast cancer when I was still a student. Thankfully, they caught it in time, but she had to sacrifice one of her breasts to survive. That must have been when things subtly changed between my parents. My father let out a long sigh.
When you were afflicted by illness, you became so frail, and I was terrified you might collapse again at any moment. It's not that I stopped loving you, but if my behavior hurt you deeply, I apologize. That being said, it's no excuse to have an affair with our daughter's husband. There is no justification, especially for something like this.
What's with pointing at me all of a sudden?
As for the man who thought it was acceptable to touch my wife, who is also the mother of his wife, there is no way I'm forgiving you. Don't think for a second you'll have an easy life from now on. The pain and suffering that Sarah and I endured will come back to you. For now, start preparing for the compensation.
Kyle, intimidated by my father's bloodshot glare, took a few steps back. The relatives moved quickly, blocking any exit. Kyle looked panicked, scanning each face nervously.
Hey, why are you all surrounding me? We're family. You're actually siding with the wife's father, who's an outsider? What are you thinking? Now's the time for family to stick together. How can you face our ancestors with this behavior?
Don't you dare speak of our ancestors. Shut your mouth. The more you talk, the more shame you bring on yourself. Even in a situation this dire, you still don't grasp the gravity of your position?
There's no escape for you. Your sins have been exposed. There's only one thing left for you to do: apologize. We're not trying to hinder you. In fact, we're giving you one last chance.
How is this supposed to be help?
Kyle stomped his feet in frustration, but no one moved to release him. By then, the relatives fully understood. The sweet boy they once knew as Kyle no longer existed. With glares from me and my father, condemnation from the relatives, and the disappointed stares of his own parents, Kyle's fate seemed sealed. Everyone expected that this would finally force him to reflect deeply. However, Kyle burst into laughter unexpectedly. It wasn't a nervous chuckle. It was a loud, open, and shameless laugh, as if he genuinely found everything amusing. Everyone in the room stared in disbelief.
What a farce this has been. This marriage was a mistake from the start. I guess it was inevitable. I only chose Sarah because she was convenient.
What do you mean by convenient?
Exactly what it sounds like. Even having a kid was for appearances. But don't get me wrong, I didn't mind being married to you, Sarah. You kept my life in order and made for a good punching bag.
How dare you talk about my daughter like that?
Both my father and I grimaced at Kyle's words, as he laughed like a broken doll. It was as if he had completely lost his mind.
But honestly, if I had to sum up our marriage in one word, it'd be boring. Sarah always did whatever I said, so life with her was flat and uneventful. So I decided to spice things up outside the house. The dating apps were part of that. And wouldn't you know it, I ended up hooking up with Sarah's mother. Just so you know, it was 100% accidental, and that's why it was so thrilling. At home, I'd boss Sarah around, and outside, I'd string her mother along. And when I'd visit her family, I'd greet her dad like nothing was wrong. It was the ultimate thrill.
Suddenly, a sharp slap echoed through the room. It took a moment for the heat and pain to spread through my palm. Kyle, having caught the slap on his cheek, still wore that disgusting grin.
But hey, all I wanted was a little excitement. Love, romance. I never cared about any of that. So if you want to punish your mother for what she did, go ahead. I won't stand in your way. In fact, I think it'd be quite the spectacle to watch a withered old woman destroy herself by sleeping with her daughter's husband.
Shut up, you despicable bastard. Yes, what my wife did is unforgivable, but only my daughter and I have the right to judge her. You, the one involved, have no right.
Stop pretending to be the hero, you senile old man. You're all upset because I took your wife, aren't you? Even if there were reasons, the fact that you couldn't keep her close is your failure.
I've had enough. Shut that foul mouth of yours, you disgraceful excuse for a man.
Kyle's father's outburst was the breaking point, and the relatives rose in unison, beginning to protest furiously. Their faces were flushed with anger, almost as if steam might begin to pour from their heads. Kyle's brazen attitude had crossed the line into sheer absurdity, leaving everyone speechless at how out of touch with reality he was. I was so furious that my head began to spin a little. Reaching out for something to steady myself, I felt my mother-in-law quickly offer me a chair. The kindness from the relatives was the only comfort in this situation.
Oh well, they say in the end we're all alone, and it's true, isn't it? Even my own parents have turned against me, siding with strangers over their own flesh and blood. What a cold world. Well then, Sarah, I guess this is goodbye for us. I don't need you or the kid anymore. Bye-bye.
Kyle made a rude and offensive hand gesture, treating the situation as if it were a joke. At that moment, I lost all interest in him, not hatred or anger, just complete indifference. The saying the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference flashed through my mind. I calmly handed him the divorce papers.
Fine. Let's get divorced, as you wish. But you'll be paying child support and alimony, so be prepared.
What a boring, predictable woman you are, even to the end.
I don't mind being boring. Thanks to that, I'm cutting ties with someone as twisted as you. In fact, it's pretty freeing, don't you think? One last question though, are you sure about this divorce? If you regret it later, it'll be too late.
Regret? What would I regret? Stop pretending to sound tough. It's pathetic.
Kyle signed the divorce papers on the spot, grabbed his belongings, and left my parents' house. As the storm passed, the living room fell into silence, broken only by the quiet sobs of my mother. She had strayed in her search for happiness as a woman, only to be used and discarded by Kyle, leaving her more broken than before. Though I couldn't forgive her for betraying my father, that didn't mean I believed Kyle had the right to hurt her either. As my father said, it was up to us, the family, to decide what to do with my mother moving forward. Gripping a handkerchief dampened with tears, my mother offered us another heartfelt apology.
Honey, Sarah, I'm so sorry. I was a fool. My family was you too, and I should have cherished you the most. I ruined everything because of a moment's weakness. I have no more excuses. I'll accept whatever consequences come my way.
In light of the seriousness of your actions, we cannot stay as husband and wife. You must also take responsibility as a parent. I'm divorcing you. Take this time to reflect on yourself.
Right. Thank you for everything until now.
My mother gathered her belongings and left the house as well. I doubt we'll ever meet again. After her departure, my father turned to the relatives and apologized sincerely.
I'm deeply sorry for the mess my wife has caused. I can't apologize enough for ruining what was supposed to be a joyful family gathering. I'll arrange another meal at a later date, and I'll cover all the costs.
Oh no, please, there's no need. We should be the ones apologizing. Our son has done something unforgivable to your daughter and to you as well. We're truly sorry.
We'll make sure Kyle takes full responsibility. No matter where he goes, we'll see to it that the alimony and child support are paid. Please rest assured, Sarah, we'll take care of it.
Please, you don't need to apologize for someone like him. There's no reason for you to shed tears over him. And don't worry so much. Men who stray from the right path always meet the end they deserve.
As I smiled warmly, knowing everything that had transpired, the relatives stared at me in shock. Afterward, we submitted the divorce papers to the county courthouse and officially became single again. Since I was no longer under anyone's financial care, I knew I had to support myself. Still, with the baby on the way, my priority was keeping myself healthy, so I began working from home on my computer to make a living. I rented a place not too far from my father's house, so he could easily come to help if I ever needed it. One day, while I was walking around town to buy a new laptop for work, I unexpectedly ran into Kyle.
Sarah, is it really you, Sarah? Oh, thank God. Now I can finally be at peace. Please, Sarah, help me.
On a crowded street, a gaunt-looking man clung to a pregnant woman, causing people passing by to cast curious, uncomfortable glances our way. It crossed my mind that it would be amusing to shout out and make a scene, labeling Kyle as some kind of creep. Since this was the grand finale of my revenge, so I decided to stick to the plan and see it through. I agreed to hear him out, but in a different location.
So? You seem pretty flustered. What's going on?
It's a disaster. I'm in deep trouble.
As it turns out, Kyle hadn't just been cheating with my mother. Through tailing him, I had discovered that he had multiple relationships with women he met on a dating app. Once I knew this, I wasted no time in using the information. I tracked down every woman Kyle had been messaging through the app and quietly reached out to them. At first, they looked at me like I was a stranger, but once I showed them my marriage certificate, proving that I was Kyle's legal wife, their attitudes shifted. Each of them had believed Kyle was single. He had been dangling the promise of marriage to maintain these relationships. When I showed them the photos of him cheating with all these women, they realized they had been deceived, and their love quickly turned into hatred. As a result, Kyle was being relentlessly pursued by them.
You brought this on yourself. Figure it out on your own. What kind of man tries to drag a pregnant woman into his mess?
Now's not the time to say that. There's one particularly dangerous woman involved.
Apparently, one of the women he got tangled up with was practically a con artist, connected to some shady characters. He was no longer just being chased by scorned women, but by dangerous people as well. Furthermore, life on the run requires money, but Kyle had blown through his savings to maintain these relationships. Therefore, he was broke, and running away was becoming increasingly difficult.
Hey, Sarah, why don't we try again? Since I left that day, I realized how much I need you. I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. I swear I'll change. Let's start over as a family, the three of us, and live happily ever after.
What nonsense are you talking about? You only miss me because you're tired of running and miss the convenience of your old life. Basically, you just want to get back together to save yourself and get some money, right?
No, I truly love you. It took being apart to realize my true feelings. Please take my hand. Let's take the first step toward a bright future together.
I slapped his hand away as hard as I could. Kyle looked at me, bewildered. Did he really think he could win me back so easily? Did he honestly believe a few sweet words would make me fall for him again? He must have thought very little of me.
I told you, didn't I? I warned you when we divorced that if you regretted it later, it would be too late. You're the one who threw me away. So, no matter how much you reach out, I'm not taking your hand.
What, Sarah, do you really not care what happens to me? I'm the father of your child.
Don't you dare call yourself a father. What have you ever done for this child? You tarnished our family's reputation, and I will never forgive that. Not only did you betray me, but you also hurt my father, my mother, and every single one of our relatives. The only thing I want from you is for you to regret this for the rest of your life. I'll be watching to make sure you do. So, get ready.
With that declaration, I turned and walked away, leaving Kyle standing there, stunned. It was over. It had been tough going through this while pregnant, but it was finally done. From tomorrow onward, I wouldn't waste another thought on him. Instead, I would focus solely on my child. I made that promise to myself as I walked into the sunset. After that, Kyle was cut off by his entire family. With no one left to rely on, he was completely alone. Rumors of his divorce and infidelity had spread at his company, making his workplace unbearable. On top of that, his frequent absences due to his life on the run led to him being fired. Naturally, with his bad reputation, finding another job would be nearly impossible. Without any income, it was only a matter of time before Kyle hit rock bottom. It was exactly what I had hoped for. As for me, I still had moments when I'd think back to the whole ordeal and feel down, especially with the added stress of pregnancy. In the end, I had my father. Whenever I reached out, he would drop everything to come listen to me, calmly and supportively. I was so grateful for him.
I would like to name this baby with Ray as her middle name in your honor.
Pursue whatever you desire. Nothing could bring me more joy.
Later, I gave birth to a baby girl. When my father rushed to the hospital and held her in his arms, his face softened as he gazed at her with absolute love. Even though I had caused him so much worry, from my marriage to my divorce, I felt like I had finally been able to make him proud by giving him a granddaughter. He had always downplayed his involvement in raising me, saying,
I wasn't much help when it came to parenting.
But I already knew he had been reading tons of parenting books, trying to learn everything he could. I had no doubt he'd be a wonderful grandfather. As for me, I wanted to be the best mother I could be. Just like my father poured all his love into me, I was determined to give my daughter all the love and happiness I could.